Alright, so the first section we're going to be going over is the origin insertion for these muscles. And so the first group of muscles we're going to be looking at are the iliopsoas group. So that's going to be the iliacus and the psoas major. So for the origin for the iliacus, it's going to be the inner surface of the ilium, also the base of the sacrum, so this little red area right here. And then for the psoas major, it's going to be its origin is going to be on the side here, so it's going to be the last of the thoracic vertebrae, also all of the lumbar vertebrae. And then the insertion for each of them is going to be the trochanter, which would be this little blue spot right here. All right, so the next set of muscles we'll be looking at for the origin and insertion of is the gastrocnemius and soleus. So starting off with the gastrocnemius, the origin is going to be the posterior surface of the two femoral condyles. So looking at the model here, it's going to be right here, kind of like on the top end of the back of the knee. So if you can see it in the model, these two little red spots right here. And then the insertion of that muscle is going to be down here on the posterior surface of the calcaneus, which when you look at it, it's going to be right here, a little spot. And then for the soleus, its origin is the upper 2/3 of the posterior surface of the fibula and tibia. So for that, it's going to be, once again, on the back side of the leg and the model here. It's going to be right along these two bones here. And then the insertion point for that is also going to be the posterior surface of the calcaneus, which once again is going to be this little blue spot right here in the back of the ankle and foot. All right, so for the next set of muscles we've been looking at, it's going to be the sartorius and the rectus femoris. So for the sartorius, the origin is going to be the front anterior superior iliac spine, which is also going to be that little groove right above the acetabulum. So if we're looking at the model here, the origin will be right here, right underneath the groove, right here. Then it's going to insert all the way down to the base of the patella and patellar ligament, right next to the tibial tuberosity. So we're looking at the model here. It's going to be this little blue merged section right here. Then for the rectus femoris, the origin is also going to be the front inferior iliac spine. So roughly about the same location for the origin for the sartorius. It's going to be this little red mark right here, right about this area. And it's also going to insert down toward the patellar ligament, but more on the front of the tibial tuberosity, so right about here. All right, so the next set of muscles we're going to take a look at is the hamstring group, which is comprised of the bicep femoris, the semimembranosus, and the semitendinosus. So starting off with the bicep femoris, the origin is going to be up around here in the lower / medial impression of the tuberosity of the ischium. So on the model, it's going to be right around here. And it's going to come down and insert in the lateral side of the head of the fibula and the lateral condyle of the tibia. So on the model, so just right about here. Next, for the semimembranosus, it's going to start with the origin on the ischial tuberosity. So looking at the model here, be right along here on the inside, and it's going to come down and insert down at the posterior surface of the medial condyle of the tibia. So that's going to be right about here. That's a little blue spot right here, if you can see that. And then for the semitendinosus, it's also going to have its origin in the ischial tuberosity right along here. And then it's going to come down and insert in the upper anterior medial side of the condyle of the tibia. So on the model, it's going to be this location right here. All right, so for the next section of muscles we're going to look at, we're going to be looking at the gluteus maximus and the gluteus medius. So the origin for the gluteus maximus is going to be the posterior gluteal line of the ilium. So we're looking at the model right here. it's going to be this little red mark right here on the model. And it's going to come down and insert in the gluteal line of the femur and the iliotibial band, or the IT band of the, it's going to be right along here. And for the origin of the gluteus medius, it's going to be the outer surface of the ilium, just below the iliac crest. So looking at the model here, it's going to be this big red mark right here. And it's going to insert down in the back and middle of the surface of the greater trochanter. So if we look at the model here, it's going to be this little section right here. That I can't see, right here. And then just in case you didn't see it, for the IT band, it's going to be right along here. All right, so continue on, we're going to be looking at the quadricep groups, which, since we already went over the rectus sporus, we'll be taking a look at the vastus intermedius, vastus medialis, and the vastus lateralis. So starting with the vastus intermedius, the origin is going to be the upper 2/3 of the femur. So we take a look at the model here. So we this big red spot right along here, the very front of the femur. It's going to insert down to the upper border and upper side of the patella and patellar ligament. So it's not really marked here on the model, but it's going to be right above here, right above the patella. And then next is the vastus lateralis, which is going to have its origin on the outer surface of the femur. So we run along here, so it's going to be right below the greater trochanter. And it's going to come down and insert in a very similar spot on the upper border of the patella and patellar ligament. So right along here. Then the vastus medialis is going to have its origin on the linea aspera in the internal condylar ridge. So turn the model here, it's going to be this little red line right along here. Once again, it's going to insert down in the inner half of the upper border of the patella and patellar ligament. So run along just about right here. All right, so next set of muscles we're going to be looking at is the peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis. So starting off with the origin for each actually. The origin for the peroneus longus is going to be the upper 2/3 of the fibula. That's going to be right along here. And then right below it is the origin for the peroneus brevis, which is the lower 2/3 of the fibula right along here. Then for the origin of each, the peroneus longus is going to come down and insert on the medial cuneiform bone and the first metatarsal bone. So we look at here, it's going to be right along the side right here, if you can see the blue marks on it. And then the insertion for the peroneus brevis is going to be the fifth metatarsal bone. So basically just right across from the insertion for the peroneus longus, it's going to be right there on the tuberosity. So the next muscle group we're going to be looking at for the origin insertion is the hip adductors. So those consist of the pectineus, the adductor brevis, adductor longus, adductor magnus, and the gracilis. So starting off with the pectineus, the origin is going to be the front of the pubis, just above the crest. So it's going to be generally right about here. And then it's going to insert down in the pectineal line of femur between the lesser trochanter and the linea aspera. So looking at the model here, it's going to be just about right along here. The next is the adductor brevis, which the origin is going to be the inferior ramus of the pubis. So if we're looking at that in the model, won't be able to see it on the video, but it's going to be right just alongside the inside of here. And its insertion point is going to be just below the lesser trochanter. So look at the model, it's going to be right here. And then next is the adductor longus, which is going to be start at the front of pubis, so right here, and it's going to insert down in the middle line of the linea aspera. So right along here, that same area. Next is the adductor magnus, which its origin is also going to be the ramus of the pubis, and the ischiotuberosity, which is also going to be somewhat alongside the inside of here. And its insertion point is going to be also the linea aspera, which is along here. And the last is the gracilis, with the origin being the front medial ramus of the pubis. So if we're looking at it, it's going to be kind of right alongside the inside of here. And it's going to insert in the front medial tibia below the condyle. So it's going to come all the way from about here, all the way down to right here. All right, so the last muscle group we're going to be looking at for the origin and insertion of is the deep 6 external rotators, which are all located roughly around this area. But the main one we're going to be looking at is the piriformis. So the piriformis origin is the front of the sacrum and the back of the ischium. So if we look on the model hill here, it's going to be right back along here. You can see that along here. Rotate this on, and it comes through right here, and it has this insertion in the superior and posterior aspect of great trochanter, which is going to be right back along here. Right along that. And that is it for the origin and insertion. All right, so this is going to be part 2 of the hip, pelvis, and thigh muscle function assignment. And in this video, we're going to be going over how each of the muscles that we've discussed previously concentrically contract as a agonist, and I'll also be stating what muscles work antagonistically to allow that movement. So the first group, or the first muscle group we'll be going over is the iliopsoas group. So that's the iliacus and the psoas major. And the concentric action is going to be hip flexion. So that's bringing the hip up to the trunk like this. And then the antagonist muscles that are going to be working against that is the gluteus maximus and the hamstrings. All right, so the next muscle group we're going to be going over is going to be the gastrocnemius and the soleus, which when they concentrically contract as the agonist, it's going to cause plantar flexion in the foot, like so. Do it a couple times with the camera. And then the antagonistic muscle is going to be the tibialis. Moving on to the next muscle is going to be the sartorius, which when it concentrically contracts as the agonist muscle, it's going to cause hip flexion, hip abduction, hip lateral rotation, and as well as knee flexion. And then the antagonistic muscles that allow for that movement to happen is going to be the gluteus maximus, the hip adductors, and also the quadriceps. So the next muscle group is going to be the hamstrings, which consists of the bicep femoris, the semitendinosus, and the semimembranosus. And so when they concentrically contract, they cause knee flexion and then hip extension. And then the antagonistic muscles are going to be the quadriceps and the iliopsoas group. Moving on, the next muscle is going to be the gluteus maximus, which when it concentrically contracts, it causes hip extension and also hip external rotation. And then the antagonist muscles are going to be the iliopsoas group once again and the rectus femoris. Following up is going to be the gluteus medius, which when it concentrically contracts, it's going to cause hip abduction and also hip stabilization as well. And on top of that, it also contracts to cause hip internal rotation. then the antagonistic muscles are going to be the hip adductors, which we were talking about next. So the next muscle group we're going to be going over is the hip adductors, which consists of the adductor longus, adductor brevis, and adductor magnus, as well as the gracilis. So, just as the name implies, when those muscles contract concentrically as the agonist, they're going to cause hip adduction. Along with that, they also cause hip stabilization as well. Then the antagonistic muscles are going to be the glute medius and also the glute minimus as well. Alright, so next muscle we're going to be looking at is going to be on the front of the leg, and it's going to be the rectus femoris. So when the rectus femoris concentrically contracts, it's going to cause hip flexion and also knee extension. And the antagonistic muscles for that are going to be the hamstrings and the gluteus maximus. So the next muscle we're going to be going over is the piriformis. So when the piriformis contracts concentrically, it's going to cause hip external rotation, like that. Then also hip abduction, but only when the hip is in flexion. So, like that. And the antagonistic muscles are going to be the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus as well. Alright, so next up is the rest of the quadricep group, which involves the vastus medialis, vastus intermedialis, and then the vastus lateralis. And so when those three muscles contract, they primarily contract concentrically to cause knee extension. And then the antagonistic muscles are going to be the hamstrings. Alright, so the last muscles for part 2 are going to be the peroneus longus and brevis. So, which, when they concentrically contract, they cause eversion of the foot. So, there. And also plantar flexion. So the foot going on like that. And the antagonistic muscle is going to be the tibialis. And that concludes part 2. Alright, so this is going to be my third and last video for my hip, pelvis, and thigh muscle function assignment. And in this video, we're going to be going over strengthening exercises for each of the muscles that I've talked about in the last 2 videos. And also a function movement that is caused when each of these muscles concentrically contract and occur in just everyday life. Alright, so the first muscle group we're going to be looking at is the iliopsoas group. And so when this muscle group contracts, it causes hip flexion as its concentric action. So the strengthening exercise we're going to be looking at is a lying leg raise, which looks like so. And bringing the hips up to the trunk. And then a functional movement that is caused from this concentric action in everyday life is walking up a set of stairs. Alright, so the next muscles we're going to be going over is the gastrocnemius and the soleus. And since their concentric contraction causes ankle plantar flexion, the strengthening exercise is going to be standing calf raises, which look like so. You can't see it because of the angle, but you can see my feet going into plantar flexion. And then the functional movement is going to be any form of jumping. Alright, the next muscle is going to be the sartorius. So the strengthening exercise is going to be a seated leg lift with lateral rotation. That looks like this. So put the leg up, get that hip flexion, get that lateral abduction, pick it up, bring it back in, just like that. And then the functional movement is going to be sitting cross-legged, kind of like how I am now. Alright, so the next set of muscles is going to be the hamstring group, and the strengthening exercise is going to be a Romanian deadlift, which looks like this. And then the functional movement is going to be any form of just walking up here, uphill, and having your hip go back into extension. So the next muscle is going to be the gluteus maximus, and the strengthening exercise for that is going to be a body weight hip thrust, or a body weight bridge, as some people might call it. Come down. I'm gonna go press up like that. Really engaging the glutes here. Down. Then the function movement is going to be anytime you stand up from a squatted position. So whether you're down like this or anything like that, and just standing up from that position. The next muscle is going to be the gluteus medius, and the strengthening exercise for that is going to be a side lying leg raise. Frame. Nice and simple. Come up like that. Back down. And then the functional movement for that is going to be anytime you have to stand on one leg, as the gluteus medius is a big part of stabilization in the hip. So anytime you're having to balance on one leg, the gluteus medius is going to be playing a part in that. All right, next up is the hip adductors, and the strengthening movement for that is a standing hip adduction with resistance. So in this case, I'm going to be using a resistance band. So get the band here. I'll put foot in it. And then the functional movement for that is anytime you're sitting and you kind of go cross-legged. So what I mean by that is sit down just like this, frame, and just bring your foot up and having your leg like that. Other side. Which this movement is commonly found if you're just sitting at a desk for like a class, or just sitting down in general. All right, so the next muscle is going to be the rectus femoris, and the strengthening exercise I'm going to be demonstrating for that is a dumbbell lunge. So, have my dumbbells, nice and easy, just lunge forward, back up, and then my functional movement for that is anytime you're having to kick anything. So an example of that would be kicking a football or kicking a soccer ball. All right, so the next muscle is going to be the piriformis, and the strengthening exercise for that is going to be a seated external rotation of the hip with resistance. In this case, I'll be using a band. So getting this set up. That. Nice and easy, just and then the functional movement for that, just seen in everyday life, is going to be just anytime you're turning your body to the side and having that hip open up and then close. So the next muscle group is going to be the rest of the quadriceps. So the vastus intermedius, the vastus lateralis, and vastus medialis. Then the strengthening exercise for that is going to be a front squat or a goblet squat. So just to demonstrate here, have my little dumbbell like this, go down like that. On. And then the functional movement for that is going to be just anytime you're standing up or getting out of a chair. And so pretty much just anytime you do that. All right, so the last two muscles are going to be the peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis. And the strengthening exercise for that is going to be banded external rotation of the ankle, or banded exversion. So I have my trusty resistance band here. Just gonna wrap it around my foot like so. Kind of hold it out away from me. Making sure the ankle is doing all the work. And then the functional movement for that is going to be just walking on any form of uneven ground. So anytime you're going hiking or anything of that nature. And that concludes my hip, pelvis, and thigh muscle function assignment. And I hope you enjoyed.